Greetings and welcome to In-Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Parents and guardians may be gearing up for the resumption of school. How does that preparation look when you are charged with the care of an individual who has special needs? Phillis Griffith is the president of New Beginnings Education Center, and she joins us now to discuss just that. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Griffith. And I want to start off because sometimes you hear about special needs schools. I don't know whether or not private special needs schools make such a big distinction. So give me an overview and break it down for me. Thank you.
Okay, so we have an organization. It is the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and we have about 13 schools within our organization. Our association started in 2006, and it was created so that we could access funding for our various schools. The funding would have gone towards part payment of teachers' salaries or the upkeep of grounds and premises and school fees for some of these students. Just as you said before, I truly believe that not much is known about the Private Special Schools Association of Trinidad and Tobago, but we do have a huge amount of children who come to our schools, and these children are engaged in not only academics, but practical skills also. So most of them may not be able to fit into the mainstream school system. So they come to our schools and they benefit from our programs.
And I want to get back into that, but I also want you to peel back the curtain a little bit on your journey, please, Ms. Phillis, in the sense that both of my parents taught, and I try to run as far as possible. Sometimes it feels like I ran in a circle. But how did you get into this career choice? What is your why?
I actually started off as the secretary of the school, and there were intervals where a teacher might have been absent, and I was asked to supervise some children. Then I actually got a liking for it. And I realized in some of the children that some of their struggles, I would have gone through that in primary school. So I was able to relate to them. I also would have come up with creative lesson plans for them. So it would not always be what we would call chalk and talk. They would have a lot of practical stuff to do. Also realizing, that some of these children may not have been able to sit for long periods of time. So they would have to get up. We would allow them to get up and move. Or sometimes if they have to sit on the floor to do their work, we would allow them to do that. So for me, it was just being versatile and allowing the children to just be, to learn in whatever environment suited them.
And you saying that, I'm going to pause raising Ms. Griffith, because just allowing people to be is something that is so important, and that empathy, understanding, okay, well, yes, I can see a little bit of what it is you're going through, so it's not about you conforming to how it is I have my lessons planned, but let me try to meet you where you are best able to take in some of this information that I'm trying to share. And that sometimes can be a challenge, as you said, in mainstream, as you described in mainstream education. But another challenge that everybody goes through, so I'm sure you do as well, is funding. So what is the situation like with regard to funding for the association and for New Beginnings Education Center?
So through the Ministry of Education, Student Support Services Division, registered private special schools receive partial funding for 10 months of the year. For the months of July and August, we are left on our own. So for us at New Beginnings, and along with a couple other schools, we have no money to pay our staff for those 2 months. That in itself is a huge challenge because now we have to motivate our staff to still prepare for the new school year, knowing very well that they will not be paid for 2 months. And then when school reopens in September, they will still have to work for the entire month before they get a salary. Let me just explain how this works. We have to submit documents, we have to submit paperwork to the Ministry of Education before. And then there's a process. And once they complete that process, then schools will receive their checks.
And there was a heavy point of emphasis on the word registered. Does that mean that persons, organizations that are not registered but going about the work, what is that the reason for that big distinction? The way it's almost as though you put it in caps, registered.
Well, this is how schools got their funding. So you would have had to register just like how you would have a regular primary school or secondary school being registered with the Ministry of Education. And you would get a specific number, and that's how you would have access to your funding. Now, there would be other schools, other private schools who operate, but they have other ways of getting their funding. So it could be that they may have a deed of covenant with a company, they may have donations, they may have fundraisers, and that is how they would access their funding, and also through the school fees. For us, when children come to us in order to access funding towards their school fees, they must have an assessment. So the assessment will determine why is it this particular child cannot fit into the mainstream, and why is it they have to now come to a school like ours. And as a result of that, parents will get funding going towards their school fees for their child, and then the rest will be paid by the parent.
Now, I know that, I'm not sure whether or not you're located in the East, but I know a little while ago you would have hosted a fundraising and awareness pop-up market at Eddie Hart. What was that like, and what was the outcome of it?
We are actually located in the West. We are in Pity Valley. And at that time when we wanted to have that pop-up, we didn't get the amount of support that we needed. So what we did, there is a school that is close by, that is Charis Works Academy. And Charis Works is also part of our association. And Lanier said that it was fine for us to host it on her grounds, and we did it there. It was small, it was intimate, but I think everyone who came, everyone who passed through, totally enjoyed themselves, so much so that we decided before the end of the year, we are going to have another one.
And I think it's so important to be able to build that level of awareness, because creeping before you walk it makes sense. But in terms of building that awareness and building information, are there things that persons who do not have someone in their care who has special needs, who has a disability, what is some of that information that you think is lacking generally in the day-to-day runnings of people as we go about what it is we're doing?
I think that people look for something. They look for someone having a physical disability. So some of our children have learning disabilities, or what we call hidden disabilities. So I think awareness about the different types of disabilities needs to be out there so that persons would understand it is not only physical. There was an example I shared with someone recently. I was traveling and I saw a young man, so I would have known him before. And I knew he attended a special needs school. So he doesn't look as though he has a disability or a challenge. So he stopped at a traffic light. The maxi stopped at a traffic light. He could have gotten out there because it was right at the corner. And as soon as the light changed and the maxi pulled off, he pressed the button and he got out. So some of the passengers said, but he could have gotten out there. Why did he wait until he crossed? So we don't know. Maybe he was taught and maybe he is fixated in his ways that this is the spot that I have to get out on or at. So I think letting people know that there are different types of disabilities, and it's not always going to be physical where you can see it.
And I really want to thank you for bringing that example home, because it brings it into stark focus on two levels. And even for me personally, one, I have seen a person saying, well, big man or big woman like you, and with an example very similar to that. And like I said, I ran in a circle. So at a point in time, I was dealing with some individuals at a special needs school, and it was there I learned the importance of building a routine. And sometimes you deviate from that routine in just this increment, and it's almost as though you've lost your students for that day. So I really want to thank you for bringing that example home, because sometimes we really don't know what we don't know. So it's a matter of treating everybody with respect and empathy and a little bit of understanding. But we take a short break. We're coming back. We are speaking with Phillis Griffith, President of New Beginnings Education Center. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Ms. Phillis Griffith, President of New Beginnings Education Center. And you spoke about it a little bit in terms of like those 2 months outside of literally pay. But I want to ask Ms. Griffith, what has preparation for school been like within this time period as we're getting ready to start to resume?
We have, my staff and I, we have met and we started grouping our students. For students who attend our school are placed in a group, and you are placed in a group based on your ability and not your age. So we would have enrolled about 6 new students. So therefore, that was one of the things we had to do. We had to start preparing our groups. We have a couple of parents who are very vibrant in the space and who would volunteer their services. Actually, one called me today and asked, Ms. Griffith, when are we going down to prepare? I said, well, from next week. And I asked that parent to reach out to the others, and he is going to arrange the days that parents will go down and start putting things in place. So putting things in place would be like doing some painting. We may have to restructure some of the spaces. We may have to do some stuff with our fence because part of our fence is broken, and just general housekeeping. So there's where we are at now.
And listening to this to-do list, it makes me want to ask about the importance of integrity. And I say that because sometimes it's just a matter of saying, okay, well, yes, I say that I'm going to be there to help paint, so I'm going to be there to help paint. It also builds out to persons having that combined, that collective advocacy, because sometimes it feels as though, okay, well, I spoke to this group of people with special needs, so I don't need to speak to somebody who's advocating for this group. So where does integrity fit into your day-to-day runnings?
Doing what you say you would do. Keeping in mind also, I also have to keep myself in check. And I also have to look at, sometimes I end up being overworked and overwhelmed. So if it is, I have my to-do list and I say, okay, today I'm going to complete these 6 things or try to complete these 6 things, and it doesn't happen, then I have to call whoever it is, or I have to let whoever it is I was supposed to meet up with or be in contact with, let them know it is not possible for me to do this. We have that also with a few of our parents. As I said, we have some who are very committed, and in the event that they are unable to, some of them would call and say, I will not be able to make it today. But we really do try to stick to our word and say and do what we say we are going to do.
And interaction between the schools that you run, in addition to, I guess, the traditional education system, is there any sort of meeting place? I think there's a thrust to try to build capacity to accommodate individuals with special needs in the traditional education system. Does the organization that you're a part of have a part to play in efforts like that?
Yes, we do try to liaise with other schools. So there is the Port of Spain Private Schools Fraternity, even close to where our school is located. There is a primary school, and the principal and I would sometimes have conversation. At least the previous principal and I would have previous conversation. If they see that there's a student in their space who may need access to our facilities, they would reach out to us. Of course, on their end, they also will have to go through a particular channel, and that channel would be going through the ministry and going to student support services, and then student support services will make the recommendations. So it's either that particular child will be assigned an aid, or they would be placed in another environment that would suit their needs. So we do try to have that rapport. We do try to have that connection, because I say that we are the eachness in the allness. So we are all into education, whether it's special needs, whether it is mainstream. We have the children's best interest at heart. So we need to share our knowledge and our expertise.
Feels like Ubuntu vibrations until all of cross, none of cross, and some we have to carry. But in the minute that we have, is it successes that I want to ask you about? Is it reasons for continuing? Or if you just want to have something else that you want to close up with, the minute is yours, Ms. Griffith.
I think seeing the thrill in the children. So we would have had a couple of students who would have passed through our school, who would have done SEA, and then they would have now gone into secondary school, and they would have gotten subjects. Now, these are children who would have been diagnosed with either ADHD, dyslexia, maybe some of them would be on the autism spectrum, but they were given a chance. So we would have created a space for them to be comfortable, and they would have taken that knowledge and gone across to their secondary school life with it. And this, for me, is one of the proudest moments that I would have, knowing that we would have created that foundation for those students in order for them to find their place in society.
And we want to thank you for creating that space. We want to thank you for having people feel seen and the work that you do. Also reminding individuals that newbeginscenter@gmail.com is one way to reach you. But Phillis Griffith, President of New Beginnings Education Center, we want to thank you so much for your time and your efforts. And on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.